everyone, thanks for joining me today. In today's fit video we are looking at our shoulder seam alignment. This is a really critical aspect of fitting our block to make sure the whole thing just hangs really nicely. So go and grab your block and your calico sample and let's go take a look at it together now. So our shoulder seam should come from our neck point to that bone at the end of our shoulders, where it should be just where the top of the curve of our shoulders is. Now for everybody that's in a slightly different place. So on this model here you can see that the seam line is aligning with where it needs to sit on this particular model, but it may be that for you your seam line is sort of sitting diagonally across like that, and it's not actually lining up with the curve, the top of your shoulder where it needs to be. So it may be that you actually need to look at changing where that seam line sits and rotating it from this point across to where it actually needs to sit. It could be that it's gone towards the back, or it could be that it's rotated towards the front and you need to bring it from the front back. So we'll demonstrate how you resolve either of those two issues next. On our toile we have marked on where our new shoulder seam needs to sit, which is along here. So effectively we are wanting to move that seam across to there. So to start off with, grab your tape measure and just mark the distance that the new seam has been pulled forward onto the front bodice by at regular intervals along the existing shoulder seam. So let's see how much that is. Mark some points at every 2 centimetres along the shoulder seam, and then starting off at the arm side, measure out the distance and just make a note of that. For me that's 3 centimetres, then it goes down to 2.2, 1.7, 1.2, 0.9, 0.4, and then it's just tying into the shoulder point at that point. So this alteration does not affect the dart at all at the front, so that's a really nice easy alteration for our front. Okay, so grab your ruler and mark off the 2 centimetre distances that you did along the shoulder seam there. And then starting off at the shoulder point here, mark off the distance, the offset from the shoulder seam that you need to take the seam out by. So for me it was 3 at that point. And then just continue that process along, marking the corresponding points. And then just draw that line in from wherever it needs to be out. And that becomes your new front shoulder seam location. Now, what I find the easiest to do at this point is actually just to trace around our old shoulder seam like this and then actually cut it out, because then we can just use that wedge that we've removed from the front to add on to the back nice and easy, right? Excellent. So what we've done is we've taken that volume there, and all we want to do is to move that side seam, but we don't want to reduce the width of our shoulder seam at all. We're happy with the volume that was covering the arm side completely. Effectively what we wanted to say is that the shoulder seam was here and it's now moved down there. So effectively, if we want to then add whatever we've lost onto our shoulder seam at this point on the back, so that that's going to continue to cover our shoulder properly, and the volume that we've lost there we've just simply added onto here. Now the problem with this is that we've got this funny little dart here, haven't we? Which is does not make life very easy to say the least. So what I'd recommend that you do is that you grab a pen and mark the point at which this dart intersects the line here. Okay, mark that on there nice and neat. Put a piece of masking tape over your tracing paper and pop it so it's nice and firmly attached onto your back bodice, so you've got that line there. I want you then just to continue that dart line up like that. Then want you just to cut through that line and then place that other wedge over here like this, so that the back neck point here is all beautifully aligned. Okay, there we go. Now we want to continue that dart up, don't we? Now what we need to check is that this new shoulder seam is now the same length as this one, which is here. So to start off with, just measure the length of your new shoulder seam. So for me, that's coming out at 13 centimetres. So I need to make sure that the length of my shoulder seam at this point here is also going to be 13 centimetres. Now don't forget that our dart line goes up here. In fact, I might just trim that off for us so we can see that a bit more clearly. So our new dart line is going to extend up past that shoulder seam, and our dart line of our back is going to go up like that, so you can see that a bit more clearly. So then I want you just to measure the distance from your new shoulder point across to the opening of the dart, and then tap that into your calculator. For me, that's 6.3. And then measure the distance on the other side of the dart across to the neck point. Tap that into calculator. For me, that is only 12.3 centimetres. So here we've got a shoulder seam that's 13 centimetres long, but here it's only 12.3. So we're going to have a little bit of a gap at our shoulders, which isn't going to work. So our arm side won't be complete. So all we're going to do is add that distance onto the shoulder seam at this point here, right at the end. So tap in whatever your measurement is here, minus whatever your shoulder length is there, and whatever that distance is, just extend this line by that amount. For me, it's just 0.7. And then I want you to draw in a new arm side down to this point here, which is one of our help points on our arm side. At this point, transfer those alterations onto your body block, making sure that you're tracing round the new shoulder seams, the new arm side, and then also the new shoulder seam at this point here. Thanks for joining me today as we look at how to adjust our shoulder seam alignment. Such a critical aspect to review and to get right for our block. Once that's sorted, everything else sort of around the shoulder will start to sort of fall into place, and the other fit alterations we need to do there should start to work really nicely. So as ever, don't forget that you've probably got lots of little fit videos you need to look at. Do sort of pick a mix, the ones that you feel you need from this video series. I hope you've really enjoyed this today and it's been really helpful. As ever, do comment below if you've got any questions or queries or just want to join in the conversation. We always love to hear from you here at Minerva. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you next time.